Hi, everyone, and welcome to Harbor Media's first ever production grant. And this is the information session for that production grant. My name is Michelle Balconi. I'm the executive director for Harbor Media. And we have Kaylee Gilmore, our director for community engagement in media as well. We're here to present to you some information about our new grant program. It's a first of its type, not only for Harbor Media, but for the town of Hingham. And I'm going to walk through what the program's about, how it's funded, and how to apply for the grant. We are recording this Zoom session with the intention of airing it on our Harbor Media television channels in Hingham and providing it on video on demand. If you are not comfortable with that, please feel free to turn off your camera. You can ask questions verbally or in the chat. So thank you all for coming. I would like to ask if we could just go one at a time. How did you hear about the program? I'll start with a few of you and then others can chime in. Just curious how you learned about the grant program. Graham, why don't you go first?
I learned about it from the TV production teacher, Tracy Blake at Hingham Middle School.
Awesome. We're so happy to work with Tracy. We've worked with her the past 2 years, and we appreciate her helping spread the word and getting students interested like you. Lori and Adam, how did you learn about the grant program? How did you know it was opening up May 1st?
Well, Michelle, I'm always talking with you because of Vow to Stern and scheduling for filming of that. So you had mentioned it to me, and that's how I knew.
Yeah, awesome. Elizabeth, would you like to share, Elizabeth, that you also are someone who's quite familiar with Harbor Media with several shows airing on our channels? How did you hear about the grant program, that it was finally opening up?
From you.
Oh, okay, from me. Organic guerrilla marketing. And Libby, how about you?
From you, Michelle. Yes. So coincidentally, not too long ago, I reached out from the company theater to ask if you all would come and film some of our exciting goings-ons, especially around Born to Do This, the Joan of Arc rock opera, the world premiere of this brand new production that Zoe Bradford and Michael Hammond and Melissa Carubia are writing together, and will be opening July 28th. So thank you, because you've already sent some crew out to film our auditions, and we'll do some rehearsals and some of the production itself. But we're very interested in this grant because it can allow us to have a professional 3-camera video and audio recording of one of the productions itself. So then we'll be able to use that for promotion and educational purposes going forward. This play has a lot of potential to go beyond Norwell and all the way to France.
Awesome. Well, something that several of the folks here have in common is that you are already in some way are linked with Harbor Media, and that's a good thing. You are already producing public programming. You already have shows on our station, so we love that. I know our Hingham viewers are already benefiting from that, and it means you're already familiar with the production process. We have cast a really wide net, so other than me, mentioning this to anyone and everyone I've come in contact with the past few months, because I knew this was eventually going to happen. We are running video ads at the Loring and the Shipyard. We have a full page ad in South Shore Magazine. WATD is running a PSA for us. Hingham Anchor was kind enough to post our press release and photos. Social media, newsletter, our website. We're really trying to spread the word to folks who are not familiar and might have some fresh ideas, because this is a 5-year commitment to give away this money in grant funding to enhance public television. So thank you for being here. I'm going to jump into the presentation, but I do want to introduce 2 folks, 2 Hingham residents who are part of the 3-person committee who will be making grant decisions. And that is Mary Ann Blackmer and Angie Wooden. So thank you both for joining this information session. We've had some prior meetings getting ready for this moment, so thanks for hanging in there. So welcome to the Harbor Media Production Grants information session, first ever. We'll have another one May 22nd at 6 o'clock. So spread the word. And like I said, please feel free to come to our open house studio this Saturday, May 13th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. So something I feel really strong about, and I want you all to get excited about if you're not already producing for us, is this is an opportunity to become a paid television producer. These are cable funds. That means anything used with these funds must show up on television. So if you or someone you know and someone you want to work with would like to become a paid television producer, this gives you an opportunity to do that. Each of the funded projects will appear on Harbor Media's HD channels. That's Comcast 1072 and Verizon 2131 in Hingham, as well as our video on demand. We also have an option for podcast stream. If you just like the audio version of your production, we have a Podbean account and we'd be happy to do that. Anything appearing on our channels has a unique video on demand URL that you can use to showcase your creation on a website, newsletter, social media, and then we are able to track all the metrics for you. So there'll be a minimum of 8 weeks on our channels. You could always invite us to air it longer, but you would remain the owner and producer of your own programming. This could be you. This was actually photographed in our studio very recently. This is Melissa. She shoots a show called Mood Food with Melissa. She's a local private chef and uses our studio kitchen. But it's really to get you excited about producing something. And if you haven't been in our studio, to show you that part of our studio does include a full kitchen set. You could make a cooking show, of course, here, but we have also done recycling programs here and interviews here because it just gives a more homey aesthetic to your production. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the grant program, why we're offering it, what's in it for you, and then how is it funded? Because anyone who's come to the studio knows that I like to say, if you know how an organization is funded, you understand their mission. And the grant program is exactly in line with that thinking. So why is Harbor Media doing this? And it is very simple. We want more people to know about Harbor Media being Hingham's community media resource. We're really hoping this helps spread the word, whether someone applies for a grant or they just want to learn camera work, editing, participate with our crew. They don't have to take on a big project, but get involved in any way that really makes us happy. And we also would like to incentivize local producers to create their own programming for Hingham viewers. And what better incentive than to cover your cost? What is your why? Well, your why might be to become a paid television producer, to own your own programming. And we'd want to let you know that your funded production will be viewed in up to 7,500 Hingham households. That's how many people have cable television in Hingham. That doesn't account for views on video on demand, social media, or if you allow it on our Podbean. So it could be much greater than 7,500 households in Hingham, could go beyond Hingham. Funding, super important to understand. Everything at Harbor Media is funded through cable fees. The town of Hingham has relationships, formal contracts with cable providers Comcast and Verizon. And there is a fee paid to the town for being able to do business. And Harbor Media receives 95% of that fee that pays for our studio, cameras, editing software, our crew, our rent, everything. And so anything that those funds are used for also needs to end up on television. Any questions so far? This also could be you. There's a theme. So I'm just having fun showing you guys different elements of production if you've not been in our studio or worked with our crew. So this is Joe Collymore, longtime volunteer and then paid producer at Harbor Media. And Joe was doing the Leslie Stahl effect, as I like to call it. I really like setting up the shot, with 3 different camera views, and it was a way to interview during the pandemic. If your show idea consists of interviewing people from outside of Hingham, outside of the state, outside of the country, all having to do with your production for Hingham viewers, this is a possible setup that you could use in our studio. The Harbor Media Production Grant Toolkit is found on our website. We're calling it a toolkit because it's everything you need to apply. It's on our webpage, harbormedia.org. It contains a press release with all kinds of details, a program description, which was approved by our auditor and our lawyer. So it has a lot of details about the grant program, a frequently asked question document, a list of production resources. These are folks in the community, either on an unpaid basis because they're part of our board or a part of the town of Hingham's cable committee, someone who had something to do with putting this together, and then many other freelancers for filming and editing. So camera work, editing work, post-production, animation, and that list will continue to grow, I'm sure. But these are folks paid and unpaid that you can turn to for resources. And then the application itself. We try to keep the application very simple with a few short questions, including tell us about your idea, who's on your team. We do that because we do have to follow Massachusetts conflict of interest laws, that no one who helps set up the grant receives money from the grant, and your budget and your timeline. So we try to keep it simple, and then the grant committee will make decisions, and we'll go through the timeline in a minute. This also could be you. This is a shot that we did with the Rev Steph in Hingham, who's done quite a bit of programming for us. And she's been on camera a lot, and they send us their faith services as well as interviews. But this just gives you some more options, because borrowing our equipment, if it helps you save on your budget, is definitely possible. So just quickly, I just wanted to go through, basically, if you can dream it, we can air it, types of programming. So everything applies. And then we'll get to the bottom bullet point. Could be short or long format. It could be a single video, or it could be episodes. It could be a documentary style, something hilarious like a comedy, a mystery, horror, informational. All of that is appropriate formatting and open to others that are not mentioned. We do need to make sure that the subject matter is of interest to Hingham viewers or has some kind of Hingham connection. Not everyone on your team needs to be from Hingham, for sure, but you are using Hingham cable funds to make programming for Hingham. So the committee will give consideration to that. For delivery, we prefer something that's MP4 or .mov to upload to our system. The programming will air, as I mentioned before, a minimum of 8 weeks on our channels. There's online video on demand and podcast options as well. As the producer, you will give permission, and you can select what you'd like and not like, but it has to at least air on television for 8 weeks. All programming should conform with FCC public programming guidelines. That's because if we make it, if you make it, if it's part of the grant program or someone volunteering their time, we do need to conform to those guidelines for community television, non-commercial regulations. Are there any questions about that? This also could be you. This is Allie Donnelly, if you know her. She recorded an interview in our studio that complemented her Hingham cast. And she's a pro. We had a blast with her, but this just shows you another setup that we can do in our studio. Allie, as you can see, had the studio in the background. The person she was interviewing had our kitchen in the background, and those were our views for that interview format. Here's our timeline. This first grant cycle will be open for 60 days, May 1st through June 30th. Then in July, the committee will meet. We might have questions about your application just to get clarity, or say, you know, is your budget set? Can you cut your budget a little bit to fit? Because we do have a very specific amount that we can give out per year, per cycle. And then we'll be making the grant award announcements at the end of July. The way the payments will work is we will give initial funding checks that are about 1/3 of your total budget. Then we'll do a check-in and see how the production is going for another check. And then all projects must be completed and we'll have the payout for your final budget by the end of July. Now, some folks are planning to do everything in the fall, so it'd be a much faster timeline. And so we won't stick to this payment schedule. We'll stick to your production schedule. If you're looking at having everything done in 12 weeks, then we'll be giving you initial funding, checking in about when you alert that you're about halfway so we can make sure this is progressing, and then the final project. So we're not married to this timeline, except for the fact that all projects need to be completed within 12 months. Any questions?
So the initial, if I'm doing this in the summer, the initial payment would be what date?
1st of August.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Michelle, I have a question.
Sure.
Thank you. You said some folks are planning to have it done faster. How do you know who they are if the applications aren't in yet?
Because some people have been asking if they could, if the funds would be distributed by the fall because they wanted to shoot in the fall.
Okay, thank you.
We've actually had a lot of interest. We have one application already submitted, but we have had a lot of questions, and which I like questions. I will say that also with the first application cycle, if we have 5 applications, but in total, they don't total the amount that we have to give. It doesn't mean everything is going to be funded, but it does mean if we don't give everything away in this first cycle, that we will have another cycle probably 2 months later.
Okay, you went in and out. So what was the
Oh,
amount?
can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I will say that if we don't end up giving out all of the funds in our first cycle, that we will have a second cycle very quickly after for more applications.
Okay, thank you.
This also could be you. Go make something fun. This is an outdoor shot on a boat on the water. So please feel free to have fun. Our camera equipment goes everywhere. I will say that because we're making our equipment available, that we will, part of the review process will be checking out who your crew is and that they are trained on similar equipment and can take care of the equipment. We also will offer the training from our own staff and to check out that equipment if it helps with your budgets, or you may be hiring a production crew with their own equipment or rental, that kind of thing. But we do have equipment that is available. Also, our studio is available. So that's it. Happy to take questions. I think that a lot of people have unique situations or unique ideas. So feel free to ask questions or email me afterwards.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
Nope.
I have a couple of questions, Michelle.
Sure.
In the application process, number 2 asks for 2 things, proper insurance and licensing information. And whose insurance? Like for me, would it be the company theater's insurance, or would it be the production company that we're hiring?
Sure. So that's going to vary for each application depending on how you're going to crew with your own camera folks, lighting, sound, that kind of thing. So a lot of the production will fall under Harbor Media's umbrella policy. And I'm going to be sharing each application with our insurance broker to say, does this fit the definition? For sure, if someone is hiring their own crew, but using our TV studio, that falls under our insurance policy. So we're going to look at each one. Some crews that you hire have their own insurance policy for every shoot they do.
Okay, and so we're looking to hire Ocean One Productions, and so they would have their own insurance. So I
have no idea. Yeah, I'm assuming they would, but If that's who you're putting into your crew and your budget, please mention that they have their own insurance, because I'm going to take every application and give it to our insurance broker to see if it fits the definition of falling under our policy.
And then what is the licensing information?
Sure. So licensing comes into play if you're using any material, images, B-roll, music in your production that is not fair use. Then your production team is going to want to make sure that you have proper approval to use that in your video. And in the company theater's example, that's all original material. So I don't think you would come into that unless some other images were edited in and it's a historical photograph of Joan of Arc that you guys don't own.
I mean, they're just taking stock photos from the computer for the projections. So
I would just check it. I would just check it because some are fair use of Joan of Arc and some are not. So even for your own production, because you charge prices to see the theater production, you would just want to make sure any images that you're using are fair use or you get the license for them. If you mentioned hiring a professional production crew.
Yes.
Talk with them. I'm sure they are quite knowledgeable about what is fair use and what needs to be licensed.
Okay.
Any other questions about the application?
So what kind of insurance are you talking about?
So it is a liability insurance, Graham, so that if someone gets hurt on the production, that they're covered. Just because you already emailed me part of your application, if our equipment is being used, as long as the person, and we would meet with them and go over our equipment with them to make sure that they're trained on the equipment. Most cases, if our equipment is being used, it will very likely fit under our insurance policy.
All right.
Okay.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi. So if it's not your equipment, but if it's at my home, would my homeowners cover that?
Likely. I'm not an insurance broker, but that's very likely. Yeah. And also, if you hired professional camera folks, they're very likely to have their own insurance for liability.
Okay, thank you.
We just want to make sure it either fits the definition and belongs under our insurance policy, or the folks that you're working with have their own insurance, because we can't be held liable in those situations. Any other questions about the application, or does anybody want to share their ideas?
So I have like an 8th grader and a 9th grader, so someone from my grade and the grade up. How would I get insurance for that? Like, how would that work?
I think, Graham, if you all are planning to use our equipment, then it's probably going to fall under our insurance policy. But if you're saying that those students would be operating your equipment, then that would not be covered because they're not of legal age. So you would need a parent, guardian type person to be operating the equipment, or you can plan in your budget to pay professional camera people, but save on your budget by using our equipment so that that person doesn't have to rent a camera. Maybe they already have their camera. I would encourage you to look at the list of resources. There are some camera folks on there, Graham.
Right. So if I'm
that in your budget, you can include that in your budget.
So if I'm using your stuff, it's covered.
Yes, but I do want to just say that it can't be anyone. You have to be familiar with the equipment. We have cinema grade cameras, so we just don't loan them out to anyone. We do offer training, but if we feel that the person isn't completely comfortable and can be completely responsible for our equipment, then we're not going to loan it out. We can make other suggestions. We could also point you to some professional camera people, and you can build that into your budget to cover their cost. And that would take care of the insurance issue for you if it's our equipment and a professional camera person that you've built into your budget.
Graham, if you talk to a cameraman and just talk to them, they'll tell you how much their rate is per day and answer some of the questions of how they could help you and teach you a little bit about it. I'm sure any of them would be willing to have a talk with you.
That's a great point.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, definitely don't let that stop you, Graham. Okay, great. Well, thank you all for attending. Please email me, michelleB@harbormedia.org, for individual questions on any aspect. We're very excited by the interest level and hope to continue this definitely for 5 years. So help us spread the word. And if you are seeing our ads, hearing our PSAs or our videos out at the theaters, please let us know.